All right, what's the energy level in the room? Yeah. And what's the energy level on the line? Hopefully everybody's having a good time. Let's see, does this work? This one, I think so. It does. Hey, warmly welcome to the last spring season AI Monday to Tiedekulma. We are talking today of sustainability. We have three true experts with really different backgrounds, expecting to have a kind of multi-dimensional discussion here. Pick your questions in your mind, because at the end we will have this kind of Q&A part. But before we get there, I'm spending a minute on one topic, and then Patrick will spend a few minutes as well. Exciting evening tonight, because Tom Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has been promising to give some big news today, 8 o'clock Helsinki time. Any guesses what he might be telling? Yeah, nobody has, but there's lots of speculations on the web. Might be an AI assistant that one could talk with. Might be a way to use personalized data in a secure way. We don't know, but really, I think tonight and tomorrow, LinkedIn and other platforms will be full of topic. The second topic I wanted to mention here: anybody from Espoo, city of Espoo area in this room? A few of us. About 10 buildings have been burned in the past few weeks there, and does have something to do with sustainability. Possibly, or AI, possibly. But a few times ago, Mikko Alasaarella was talking here about how TikTok algorithms work. And it's a really nasty thinking that is it possible that somebody outside Finland is impacting our youth and giving these challenges that go and burn a building and you'll be a hero. So this type of AI news I wanted to mention. But let's start the more concrete part of the show. Docent Patrick Florin, please tell us the FKI, Finnish Center of Artificial Intelligence news. And this is the button to press.
Thank you. Welcome from my part too. So as you see, this is a collaboration between DAIN Studios, the Finnish Center for Artificial Intelligence, FKI, Taival and Amplify. So I wanted to say a few words about FKI news. So we have lots of events that we are doing. You can go to our webpage. You will find there links to our events that have passed. Here is one which is forthcoming. We also have every year the so-called AI Day, which is a big event. Formally, it has been in Dipoli, in Otaniemi, but this time it's combined with the Nordic AI Meet conference, and it is here in the main building, which is there. So that's in the autumn. We are also involved in the Finnish AI region European Digital Innovation Hub, and we have lots of events that are related to this. This European Digital Innovation Hub is geared towards small and medium-sized companies. So the idea with the EDIH is to help the companies in digitalization. And then I wanted to tell that we have in Finland something you have probably read about in the newspapers, 1,000 PhD positions in the so-called doctoral pilot. Of these 1,000 new positions, 100 are in AI, and we have 10 universities collaborating here, sharing the 100 positions. We got 2,500 applications, and now we're down to 400 shortlisted applicants to be interviewed. So this is a major process, as you can understand. Decisions are expected in June. And we also very much look forward to company collaboration related to this. So you can contact us if you are interested in in having something to do with a PhD student. Laura, who is going to be next here talking to you, is one contact person that you can contact. So this is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Compared to the size of Finland, I think these are really impressive numbers. So well done, whoever is funding and being the big brain behind there. But hey, the first speaker is Professor Laura Ruotsalainen, AI and Sustainability. Floor is yours. Please welcome Laura on the stage. Keskimmäinen.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Nice to be here and talk to you about AI and sustainability. So I will be talking first in general about AI and sustainability, and then talking more in details about our research that is addressing the smart cities and how we use AI for especially enabling sustainable mobility for the cities. I have a huge list of affiliations related to kind of like my name. So I'm a professor of computer science at the University of Helsinki. I'm also an active member of the Finnish Center for Artificial Intelligence, and they're leading the AI and sustainability viewpoint. But then also I'm professor at the Helsinki Institute for Sustainability, and this now a bit kind of like joining the topic why I'm talking about what I will be talking. But first, a few words about sustainability to get us all on the same kind of like stage here. So United Nations has defined that sustainable development is the international community's most urgent task nowadays. And then they have defined 17 different sustainable development goals that should be kind of like achieved in the coming years to make the world a good place for everyone. And then usually when we talk about sustainability, people relate that to climate change, which is of course the environmental sustainability is really, really critical and something that we have to do something fast for. But also sustainability is based on two other pillars. So we also talk about social sustainability and economic sustainability. And then all, of course, very important for the humankind. And then for the Sustainable Development Goals, we have different goals there. For example, equal education for everyone, sustainable smart cities, and then, of course, a good climate situation. But as said, so we need something to happen fast. So we need something called sustainability transformations to make some big changes for the prevailing situation. And this means that we need huge systemic changes. So how is then AI related to sustainability? There has been quite a lot of research on what is then the relationship between AI and sustainability. So when we develop methods based on AI, so do we good or harm for sustainability? And there's been a lot of research that has found out that actually AI is the key enabler for sustainability. So out of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, if we look in more to details into those, we found 169 targets inside the goals. And we can say that AI is enabling 134 of these goals and inhibiting 59. And I will say a few words about how we can see AI as being the enabler and when we can see it as being an inhibitor. And quite surprising was that actually the highest positive impact of AI is on climate sustainability development goals. The strength of AI definitely also from the sustainability viewpoint is its power of fast processing large amounts of data. So really looking at the small details that there is in the data that is too kind of like detailed for human eye, doing that really fast and with the complications that humans can't really process. But my favorite one, and the one that we are going to talk about today more, is that we are able to simulate things. We are able to try and error. We are able to say that, okay, if we do these big systemic changes, this is what comes out, and maybe this wasn't a good result for the humankind, for the environment, and then we can do fast new changes and try different realities. And then I will be talking about this today more. Of course, there are many different kind of like challenges related to AI, also from the sustainability viewpoint. So we talk about the data, the quality of the data, that data is not biased. This is really, really important, also from the sustainability viewpoint. The problem is also that when we talk about AI, we are talking about quite often of systems that have a black box nature. They have, as said, from the basis, very high complexity. We are not always able to really understand what happens. And of course, to be able to make important decisions for sustainability, we have to tackle those. And then especially when talking about then the sustainability of the climate viewpoint, then the energy consumption of these big AI models that we are training and using is of course a huge thing about related to the energy consumption that they do. And I will kind of like get back to that also later. Okay, so now talking about sustainability, the relationship between sustainability and AI, and then just a bit about also then machine learning, because this is what I will be a bit referring to in my kind of like these smart city case examples. So when talking about AI, so nowadays most of the development happens at the machine learning kind of like frameworks. And we can divide machine learning roughly into 3 different categories. We can talk about supervised machine learning when we are kind of like the humans are directing the learning of the system by labeling the data and telling the system about what it should find from the data. We talk about unsupervised when we kind of like give data and then let the system to itself decide what to understand from the data. And then we talk about reinforcement learning, that is the 3rd class, and that I will be talking more today. And this is more kind of like optimizing things, trying to learn from the data by trial and error. For example, to play chess is one of the most famous examples related to reinforcement learning. But today I will be talking about that related to then traffic optimization. So all these different categories can be kind of like based on deep learning, and nowadays mainly are. And for example, the generative AI, and nowadays everyone is talking about AI and quite often referring to, for example, to chatgpt or the DALL-E, the generative AI tools. I won't be talking about generative AI today, not about ChatGPT. I will be using the traffic data. We are using the traffic data for our research. But I did ask DALL-E to make me a traffic simulation picture. And I'm not really sure if I'm really happy with the simulation, what is happening there. So for example, the bicyclists are just going through the picture randomly, and also the pedestrians don't seem to be in a really good state there. So we are still working with reinforcement learning and not using DALL-E to do the simulations here. But as said, kind of like we really need to do some systemic changes to kind of like reach those sustainability goals that have been set for sustainability. And then traffic and mobility are definitely something that where we really need some big changes to be done. Traffic is by far not sustainable globally or anywhere. So if you look at the situation globally, so there are 1.2 million accidents that are causing a death of a human globally per year. And 93% of these accidents are caused by a driver error. And mainly nowadays because the driver is using a smartphone while driving and not really concentrating on the task. And then this is definitely something that we could with AI, then kind of like let the AI take care of the decision and perception tasks and then really concentrate on that. And also the really sad thing is that traffic accidents are the first leading cause of death for young people, so between 5 and 29 years old. Traffic is definitely also a huge kind of like problem for the climate. It's kind of like has huge amount of greenhouse gas emissions. It's actually the 25th, it causes 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions in Europe. And also traffic is definitely not equal for everyone. So not everyone has access to transport, not to public one or the private one. Okay, so how do we then kind of like try to see that how should we organize the future traffic, the mobility, to make things sustainable in the smart cities? So for that, we do these reinforcement learning-based optimizations. So in reinforcement learning, so what we are doing there is that we are looking at the situation as we have something called agents in the environment, and they are not actually agents. So for example, in our case, we are thinking that one human in the traffic is seen as the agent who tries to learn to do things correctly in the environment that we put this agent. It does do different actions, and these different actions then again affect the environment, and we observe what happens. And then in reinforcement learning, when our agent does something, we either punish it or reward it, and then based on that, we are then able to kind of like direct the learning of this agent. So as I said, in our environment, we are looking the agent is a human, and that the human does different kind of like mobility activities in the city area. And in our case, we have two projects, both addressing certain areas of Helsinki city, and so Helsinki traffic is our environment. So we are using, for kind of like doing the optimization, we use Sumo simulation platform that is kind of like replicating the traffic that we are giving to the system. And then we use data for doing the simulations based on traffic. So we have gotten the open data from the city of Helsinki. We use air quality data. I will be talking a bit more about that, kind of like obtained by the atmospheric researchers. We use demographic information about the people who live in the area, and for example, the electricity related to the electrical vehicles. So this is all the data that we use for the simulations. And so as said, we have two different projects addressing a bit to different sustainability goals. The first project has quite complicated name. We call it Couscous. But in this project, what we are trying to do is that we are looking at the future city boulevard areas together with the city of Helsinki. And we are now trying to get advice of how should the traffic in the city boulevard area be organized so that it would be sustainable. So meaning that we would have good air quality, so being healthy environment for the humans, and also to have good livability features in the area, so that people would like to live there and they would be happy with the mobility modes that they can address at the area. As said, kind of like as computer scientists, so we are developing the algorithms, the reinforcement learning optimization methods, but of course we work together with then the atmospheric scientists who are able then to do the modeling of the air quality and its relation with the traffic, and also with socioeconomic researchers who then understand the demographics of people and are able then to do those simulations. But as said, then the challenge is that we are looking now at three different simulation tasks. So we are looking at the Vihdintie city boulevard that is kind of like going to be built quite soon. And then from the traffic viewpoint, we are trying to predict what would the traffic look like in the area in the future. And then for that, we are, of course, then looking at different periodical changes. We look at what the weather is like, how does that affect the traffic, and then, for example, some incidents, so for example, how do the accidents affect the traffic. Then from the air quality viewpoint, so the air quality is also very dependent, of course, of the traffic, but also about what is the building kind of like features in the environment, what is the vegetation like in the environment, and also what is the weather like in the environment. So there are really large, heavy air quality modelings done for the environment and related to then the different factors that the traffic has in the environment. And then also the same thing, the air quality effects of what are the demographics of people who want to live in the area. And again, the built environment affects that too. And then again, the demographics of the people in the area affect the mobility modes that they use. And again, we have to also take that into account in our optimization problem. Okay, so as said, what we now try to do is that we want to optimize the traffic in the area in the way that people can move fluently to wherever they want to go. At the same time, we want to have good air quality in the environment, and we want to make the cities livable so that they are nice to be lived for the people, but also that people can move well in the environment, and also people can pass the environment easily and fluently. And now if we start thinking about this problem, so we are talking about something where we have quite conflicting objectives. So at the same time, we can't have very fluent, for example, private vehicle-based fast traffic and good air quality. So we have to do some kind of like balancing there. And therefore, we are talking about multi-objective AI, so multi-objective reinforcement learning for doing the city planning. Again, something that would not be possible for a human manually to do in a very kind of like fluent way, but something that we need AI to be balancing and finding a good optimum situation where everything is in a good balance. So again, the situation is quite difficult already from kind of like AI viewpoint as such, but in addition, we are also looking at the situation where things change with very different kind of like time horizons. So when we are thinking about decisions of for example, that how fast do I drive or where do I drive, we are talking about decisions done in, for example, second or minute basis. Then the air quality in the environment, that should be kind of like monitored only per 10-minute basis because it doesn't really change that fast. And then again, thinking about the livability, so how fast do people make decisions of move to another place, that takes years. And therefore, in addition to looking at multiple objectives, we are also looking at very hierarchical problem, and then therefore we are kind of like talking about quite extensive simulations there. And then therefore we have built something called multi-objective hierarchical reinforcement learning for then doing the optimization there. Okay, so in that project we were addressing now the sustainability from the social and economic viewpoint, so thinking that how do we make livable and kind of like healthy environments for humans, but of course we also want to address then the climate viewpoint, so what is the CO2 emission relation to then to the future traffic, so what kind of like traffic decisions should we make to have good traffic for the future. And then therefore we have also another project where we are now looking at the future different traffic organizations, looking at how does the automation of vehicles affect then the CO2 emissions in different kind of like city environments. And then also how does, for example, the electrification of vehicles, so what is its consequences to the CO emissions or in the environment. And then again, thinking now about traffic, so there are 3 different levels that we can address when talking about this. So already the decisions how 2 different vehicles interact, that affects a lot the CO2 emissions, especially when they are autonomous. But then also the different decisions that we make for the traffic organizations. So for example, what kind of like lane organizations we have, what kind of like traffic signs and rules do we have, for example, changing those kind of like ad hoc, that all affects a lot the CO2 emissions. And then the third layer is that what is the whole traffic like in the city area? So what is, for example, the public traffic in the area? What kind of traffic organizations do we do there? Those all have then relations to CO2 emissions. And this is again something that we do kind of like by computer science, by doing then the reinforcement learning based simulations, and then the air quality researchers then kind of like looking back what were the CO2 emissions of that. A very kind of like just the short kind of like presentation, what we have been now doing is looking at carpooling. So if we are talking about public transport in the future, so how would we kind of like get the CO2 emissions lower if we would be handling the last mile with carpooling with autonomous vehicles? And then again we are addressing the question that how many vehicles should we have, how many passengers should they have at the same time, and what would be then the relationship with the emissions. So how long should the car need to drive to get the passengers, and how content would the passengers be for the rides, and kind of like therefore also use this autonomous driving. And again, we are then addressing multi-objective problems here. So at the same time, when we want to lower down the CO2 emissions, we have to somehow balance that people have to wait. And then this is again a multi-objective problem. Then I also promised to the end say a few words about then the energy consumption. So as said, we are doing quite huge now optimization, kind of like computation tasks, and then of course they're consuming energy. And at the same time, we don't want to kind of like harm the sustainability while we want to do some good there. And this is a huge question, especially now that we are talking about the time when people use kind of like really strongly, for example, chatgpt and these applications. So previously, I was always kind of like somehow justifying that the machine learning computation, saying that it might take quite a lot of energy when we are training the model, but when we are using it, it kind of like doesn't do that anymore. And chatgpt actually kind of like changed the situation quite heavily. So there has been some computations done, and that 2023, there were 590 million sessions kind of like taken to chatgpt. And if we only think that everyone who used chatgpt was only asking one query from it at the time, so we were kind of like using roughly 1,200 million watt-hertz of the energy at that time per month. And that's actually the same amount of energy per month of usage of the application as was taken when training the whole network. And that is actually quite alarming, and thinking that it is equivalent to 9,000 average Danes' electricity use per month. So we are talking about quite huge amount of energy. So nowadays we have to also talk about then the inference, so the use of these systems when talking about the energy consumption. But one great thing that I also kind of like when talking about doing then the machine learning research in Europe, especially in Finland, is what makes me proud of is that also kind of like the infrastructure is being developed with the same goals in mind. And then one of these great examples is the Lumi supercomputing computer that is hosted by the CSC Finland in Kajaani, the city of Kajaani. And the great thing with Lumi, in addition to it being the 5th most powerful supercomputer and therefore, of course, a great tool for developing AI, it is also using 100% of renewable energy sources, so 100% of hydropower for generating the energy, and all the waste heat that comes out from its use is directed for the Kajaani city's electricity system. So meaning that 20% of the city's energy comes from this Lumi supercomputer, meaning that it also reduces huge amount of the city's carbon footprint. And this was all that I wanted to talk about, and I've understood that the questions you can ask then later, but okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. For the folks who are online, you can type your questions there throughout the presentations, and we'll take them all at the end. But the next speaker is Susanna Mäkelä. Good to finally meet you face to face. We have been sending a few mails thanks to our common friend who is sitting somewhere there in the audience. Welcome, Susa.
Thank you.
Floor is yours. This button, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much for the kind invitation. I'm super honored to be here with these distinguished speakers. There's one quote that I came across very recently, and that's about the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that somebody else needs to save it. And it was Robert Swan who actually said it. He's the first explorer who walked into the North and South Pole. I think it's really well said. We often think, well, somebody else got the idea, somebody else get the resources to do this. But no, actually it's all of us in here, all of us online, who has a role to play in this particular game. My name is Susanna Mäkelä. I'm a tech lawyer, enthusiastic policy advocate. For the past 10 years, I worked for a small software company called Microsoft. And just recently became an entrepreneur, and I'm working now in a boutique law firm called Lysa. So I'm reflecting some of my learnings here, what I've learned over the years in Microsoft, specifically speaking with the customers on this particular topic. So I'm going to go through some of that from a business perspective, business leader perspective, and not less on the research. Now, the first thing really is, and many corporates have already started to act on this, that sustainability is essential to your business success. As I started with the quote, if the planet isn't healthy, you will not gonna have prosperity in the business either. These two are intertwined heavily. In addition, it's a fantastic competitive edge for you to start doing it, and I'm coming later to some of those examples. So really investing to sustainability in your business gives you a long-term prosperity as well. Now, one of the reasons why you need to start paying attention to sustainability, if you haven't got that passion to save the planet, is the regulation. The regulation is actually increasing heavily across the world, and the one we are getting from EU is now the CSRD, Corporate Social Responsibility Reporting Directive. Now, this is mainly targeted to larger companies, to listed SMEs, but even if you're not within the immediate scope, your customer, your partner, your ecosystem might be in the scope, and that way indirectly this will start impact you, because your customers and your partners, if they have to do this, they will start looking their ecosystem and whether their ecosystem actually is helping them to meet the criteria. I'm not going to walk you through on boring regulatory, here's the checklist for this. There's actually a link at the end, the voluntary reporting guidelines that you could take a look at and see how much you could start working on those already and give you an idea for your own business purposes. Now, as a business is always looking sustainability from three angles that sustainability is capturing, and those are economical, social, and environmental. And I think often we discuss about more the environmental because that's a hot theme, the climate and the biodiversity-related matters, which are important. But there are other elements in sustainability as well that needs to be addressed, and that's going to come through those reportings as well, or the applications, and that's social. Social mean access to health, access to education, inequality, elements that brings human rights into play. There's a lot that many of you can do as a business owner or as an individual in this space. You can find a course that is close to your heart or close to your business that you can support. It could be something that is related to providing access to skills. For example, my previous employer started skills initiatives a few years ago when we realized that in order for the aging demographies to really take advantage of the resources they have and the technological advancement, they need skilled labor. And everyone needs to chip into that game. So they produced certain programs to help societies to get free access to training. Now, AI has a multifaceted role in sustainability. And we heard fantastic presentation from Laura, where you can actually use it in multiple ways, and specifically in the traffic and climate, to advance the climate. It definitely has advances for the optimization of resource use. It definitely has potential for new solutions. Your business might find a completely new area to enter into when you start using this and data. It definitely had advantages in the climate and the biodiversity related area to manage the risks and understand the current state, but also measure the progress. And what's really important is that many corporates have made their goals on sustainability. They say they're net neutral or carbon neutral, or they're going to be carbon negative. But the problem we are facing today is that we actually do not have systematic, generic way of capturing and that progress. So they all can create reports at the moment, but how do you measure them? And I think with AI, we're starting to see interesting fields to emerge where if you're not doing the measurement, if you're doing the measurement but you're not releasing your measurement, you might be catched by some AI tools that are trying to find the information. So think about a company X who's looking for suppliers, and they start scouting the web and looking what you have actually put on the web. How are you actually addressing this topic? If you have nothing, if you have like, oh, roughly right, that's not good either. So it will definitely help on the progress of reporting and getting an understanding, but you also need to be mindful of that it will bring new elements into the business field. Now, briefly on climate modeling, because this is one of the biggest aspects we are facing, including the biodiversity. So, interestingly, I found the data that the World Meteorological Organization said that up to 25% the predictions have actually improved thanks to AI. AI needs data. Now, the biggest challenge we have today among the different researchers and the actors is that the data is very siloed. There's tons of data, but it's siloed. The researchers don't have access to that. So that's one element where AI, in the current way that it's working with the chatgpt text input as well, will help if it has access to the data. Data is the core for the climate modeling here as well, to understand how do we look the short-term and the long-term predictive models. So the scientists have typically used the conventional manual modules for this, which is very energy consuming, as Laura was pointing out. But the AI emulators actually are far more faster. They don't need as much of computational power. So that's one of enabler that hopefully will start emerging in this field as well in the climate modeling. Supply chain. This is interesting, and as I already was leaning into, you are part of somebody's supply chain. So you need to start paying attention what data is out there about your company. Is it accurate? And if it isn't, what should you do about it? Because the actors are starting to use the AI tools to search for the information. Some of them are doing it because they have to do it for different regulations and for their own other purposes as well. So there's a lot that can be done in here. So always there's somebody that is in your supply chain that makes the impact in this part as well. Now, the supply chain is not only about the data, how you're doing, but it's also about how to systematically improve your logistics and optimize them, reduce the cost, and promote the sustainability. But also, hopefully, we're finally getting in there that you actually start seeing the poor labor conditions as well, and the indicators and trends for that. AI in circularity is a big theme, and Finland is very known for the promoting circularity. I would use a case that I came across in my former employer, Outokumpu. So Outokumpu started to do a digital transition in their Tornio factory, and they practically did a digital twin. Based on that implementation, they actually realized that they are saving material and optimizing the use of it because the data that they get through that digital twin process is transparent. No longer a shift A who's going into the factory can change the systems, and when shift B comes, they have to figure it out again because they were competing with each other every now and then, I heard. So transparency becomes an element through the data, providing the optimization benefits. They actually had energy savings, significant energy savings because of that, material savings, and optimized the material as well to get better. There would be a lot of examples in the circular economy side that you could look into where to use AI and particularly using the data. Biodiversity. This is maybe less discussed in context of sustainability. And I was really intrigued by myself to figure out, okay, so how is AI helping in biodiversity? I mean, how do you do this? I'm a lawyer, I'm not a technical person, so I'm bewildered by this. But actually there are researchers who've done this by putting sensors in the jungles, and they're actually using sound recordings to understand the state of the play in particular area. The AI who's been trained to recognize certain birds, they actually then tell, okay, there's this and that many species have disappeared maybe. Interesting, isn't it? Wow, you can use fantastic things. Now, here is my bread and butter, and that's ethical consideration. Now here we comes to close to law, what I do. Now, when you use AI, we obviously, as with any technology, there's a risk that we can not only do good, but also do harm. And with AI specifically, we have that element of harm in the play. And that's why we have to find the responsible way of deploying AI, using it in a transparent manner, make sure that the benefits are spread and it's not just the benefits of some, and ensure that we have some guardrails in place for the negative impacts that AI eventually will bring. There are actors who are planning and already using AI for bad. And what we will be seeing more, particularly in the area of democracy, are the elections interference, deep fakes, etc. Now, how many of you have heard about ethical principles? And I hope, how many of you have actually done ethical principles? Okay, good. That's a start. It's a start. But how do you bring them into life? That's the key. Because if you have ethical principles in your document, in your policy, the key question is, how do you live them through every single day, through every single business decision that you need to make in this front? And that's where it gets harder. Not impossible, but harder. But that's the work you need to start doing today. Put them in the use and think through the ethical dilemmas that you will have. You will have value tensions. One of the cases that I've used in the past was a pilot about product solution that would help a blind child. Now, the question for lawyers that I often was asking, okay, so you have a blind child with the product of a HoloLens type of classes that is telling you what's happening around you. Now, what do you do when you have a person walking across you on the street? The same person might be walking across the blind child every day with a dog, but the blind child doesn't know because the blind child doesn't see. So how do you implement this? Now, when you ask this question from lawyers, and I can a bit diminish lawyers here because I'm a lawyer, lawyers will say, oh, you can't do that because privacy. But no. You can do privacy and you can do inclusions, but you need to think that way. There's always a way to find a solution where you keep and safeguard privacy, but you also make sure that those who are less advantaged, they are included in the society, like in this particular case example. And that's the value tension that you will inevitably face when you start implementing AI into the products. Now, there's a lot of regulation in here as well. EU AI Act is coming. G7 is putting together different voluntary codes. Japan is looking into this. Singapore is looking into this. US is looking into this. So you have to stay alerted. But there's no fear. as long as you put your ethical principles in place and you look, for example, OECD examples, and you really start implementing those, you're most likely going to be okay. Don't do social scoring. Don't do manipulation. You're pretty good. But if you deeper you are on the technological stack, the more you have to start doing different actions in terms of documentation, in terms of reporting, in terms of cyber assessment, etc., etc. So seek for an advice if that comes to your plate. Quickly, take an action. If the only thing I want you to leave here today is take an action in your business, in your personal life. Small steps matter. Now, when you start taking actions in your business, be bold. I want you to be bold in your business. You don't have to know how to become carbon negative today. But if you take the step to think through your products and your solutions, that's where we're aiming, then you start acting on it. Find peers. Find an ecosystem, find other companies and corporates and entrepreneurs who are also thinking about this. Exchange ideas. Because this is all about collaboration. You can't do this on your own. There's somebody who is more advanced and they're more than happy to tell you. Go with that bandwagon, particularly with the bigger corporates. They have the resources. Look out to them for support. And implement the ethical principles into your daily work. Thank you.
Thank you. Sampo, have we got some questions from the chat already? Have we got some questions in the chat already? Some. So those of you who are online, keep typing the questions. They clearly are reserved here. One more presentation to come from DAIN Studios. We have Xavier Jolas. Please come to the stage.
Thank you. Yes, so welcome on my behalf as well. Pleased to meet you all. So I'll be talking about data, AI, and sustainability in action. So I'll be covering a bit similar subjects that you have seen so far, but with some new use cases and hopefully something interesting for you to take home. So shortly about me, so I've been living in Finland since '98 and then spent a few years in Dubai. So also very different weather and ways to handle things in these countries. So that was quite interesting. I've been now 2 years working at DAIN as a senior strategist. And I've been working on different types of projects in different industries, including sustainability. So we also implemented some things internally at DAIN, so I'm also part of this. So this is very interesting subject area for me. And previously, as maybe some of you have been working many years in Nokia and then also in media. So apparently I like blue logos in the companies I work for. Also a little quote for me, and actually more from the CEO of Walmart, completing what Susanna just mentioned, that sustainability is the single biggest opportunity of the 21st century, and it will be the next source of competitive advantage. So as we know that AI will inevitably be a central force of the future, we can safely say that these two will intersect more and more in the future. And we have seen that AI models can help to build very, very complex scenarios related to climate change. So it can work on the state level, but also on company level for more operational issues. So in this presentation, I'll show you a few definitions, some key drivers in sustainability management, some selected AI use cases. So we'll have four use cases we'll look at, and then a short recap. So the definition, I mean, there are many definitions out there, and we talked about the UN Sustainable Development Goals that I will also mention in this presentation. And the University of UCLA also has their own definition. And I think it's quite interesting that both of these mention the current generation and future generation. So that's really an important aspect of sustainable development. So catering for current needs while preparing for future ones as well without having some bad consequences. And this UCLA definition also gives more information about what is actually sustainability, as we have seen previously. So it's, of course, environment, but health, social equity, and economic vitality in general. So some of the prediction on the potential impact of using AI for environmental application. So this is a PwC study which has been commissioned by Microsoft, so maybe a little disclaimer because they have interest in this one, of course. It's estimated in the first prediction that AI will boost the global economy, especially for environment application, by $5 trillion US, which is really a 4.4% increase related to business as usual, so it's very significant. And this could be due to operational efficiencies, improvement in companies, and as well as this whole ecosystem which is being built around AI, with new companies being creating all the time. So this is very, very good for the global economy as well. Then the second one is a positive environmental impact. So as we have heard previously, we have to balance, the pros and cons of using AI. But in general, AI can really be used to help reduce the worldwide greenhouse emissions. And it's estimated it could be up to 4% in 2030, which is basically the combined emissions of Canada, Australia, and Japan. So it's quite significant. Of course, we have to include also some emissions which are related to the use of AI, which we'll see a bit later. But this is still on the plus side. And then some new jobs are being created also thanks to AI in this environment application. So, of course, some old jobs might be disappearing little by little, so there is less need for certain roles. But then there is always need to develop these AI systems and to maintain them and to improve them over time. So all in all, we are talking about 38 million net new jobs, which is, always debatable, but that's what this study says. So we talked a little bit about sustainable AI previously. So, using these large language models, of course, uses some energy. Training them also uses quite a lot of energy. We estimate, for example, chatgpt 3, training it is like the equivalent of 130 US homes. But in the big scheme of things, in the current usage, it's still, not as high as transport and so on. So here you see some example of car average usage over a year. So maybe it's the equivalent of 10 cars being used the whole year. But of course, more people are using these models and they're getting bigger and bigger. So it's important to keep an eye on the number of parameters and trying to make these models as efficient as possible. And also think about hardware. What kind of hardware do you use to run these models? So some of the key drivers in sustainability management. So this is also some selected, there are more, but selecting drivers. So we talked about regulations that like CSRD, net zero targets, then this UN Sustainable Development Goals. So of course, companies are really paying close attention to these ones, especially when there are some fines involved, to be honest. Then the public image, so obviously customers, investors, and partners are looking more and more into this sustainable agenda. And employees as well are also selecting their companies based on sustainability strategies. Then we talked about some business benefits earlier on, so energy savings, less attrition for employees, because we notice with our customers, especially in manufacturing, that they have a big problem to keep employees. So there is a strong turnover of employees. And AI can also help to retrain employees faster and to be kind of companions for new employees, therefore increasing efficiency. And last but not least, ethics. So doing the right thing. Some companies really have this as part of their DNA. And obviously not all of them, but some of them really have this as their core values, and they have been really doing this sustainability-related actions for many years already. So it's nothing new for them. So we already checked this UN Sustainable Development Goals, but I think it's always good to repeat that this is a really great starting point for sustainability strategies. And the 17 goals from the 2030 agenda were actually signed in 2015 by all members. And I think that we talked already on some applications on health and smart cities, but I think there are even more areas. So actually most of these areas, something can be done using AI, but let's concentrate on these six areas here. So we talked about health, so healthcare and well-being, which is actually one of the biggest area where AI can be used, obviously to help doctors in image recognition to find illnesses, for example. Then we have education, quality education as number 4. So Gen AI and LLMs are really becoming an important support for both teachers and students. I mean, it's debatable, is it always a good thing or not? But realistically speaking, they can also have access to much more knowledge and develop their skills. Then we have maybe the more obvious one in industry and innovation and manufacturing. So we have actually quite many projects in this area where customers are really trying to use AI to save energy and to be more efficient in their operations. So it's really, really big. Then we talked about smart cities and having this self-driving cars where you can basically also share some vehicles, which is better for safety and better in terms of air quality and emissions. Then we have climate action, obviously, building these very large models to do complex calculation to predict climate change and to plan some actions accordingly. And finally, life on land. So I was quite surprised to see that, for example, in France, and I guess in some other countries, agriculture is really in high demand of AI-related solutions. So you might have seen this, this automated picking in some cases, or then you can really select with some lasers what you want to destroy. So they seem to be always looking for these innovative solutions, and it's actually already a big business. And it's also good for the planet because it enables to be more targeted in what they are doing and maybe to spread less of these bad products. So I think we should really keep an eye on agriculture as well. So we look into 4 use cases. So one is also smart and sustainable cities, operations and waste management. So I will be looking at a bit the pharma industry and what they are doing here. Carbon footprint calculations, which is something that big manufacturers are really interested in. And then net impact calculations, which is, in a way, balances positive and negative impacts in different sustainability categories. So let's start with this one. So some of you might be familiar with the Upright project, which is a Finland-based company which was created a few years ago and which is really, really successful in this area. So what Upright is doing is basically calculating net impact of environmental, sustainable impact in different categories like society, knowledge, health, environment. So you see on the left-hand side the negative impact, on the right-hand side positive impact. So it could be so that you have a very high positive impact on society because you create a lot of jobs, you pay taxes and so on, but then unfortunately you have an environmental footprint because maybe you are an oil company. So I think this is a good way to really assess yourself, see how you also progress over time. So it's a data-driven method to say where you stand. And then you can also, of course, compare to your peers in the industry. So it's not like exact science, but I think it's a really good starting point. And it uses really a huge amount of data. So it's basically using scientific publications, so more like 200 million publications, and then 150,000 products. So it's really a comprehensive set that they're using. And I think it's really, really good to have these quantified KPIs for companies. So there is no subjective human interaction with this. On the negative side, potential pitfall, which they are mentioning themselves, is that it's big stuff only. So they don't take everything into consideration, like if you are doing charity work on the side and so on. So they are not capturing absolutely all activities, but I think it's a really, really good starting point. And investors are using this data to basically select the companies they want to invest in. So obviously the better net impact, positive net impact you have, the more chances you have to get investors on board. So another example of AI usage is for carbon footprint calculations. I mean, this is more like maybe machine learning, but here we see also an example of chatgpt being used to build their own carbon footprint calculation, so by someone in the University of Oklahoma. So due to the regulations that we mentioned earlier, companies need to better understand their different scope emissions, so scope 1, 2, 3. And one of the tricky part is basically what they call the use of sold products. So basically if you build a big machine, so you know more or less how much this machine will kind of generate a carbon footprint. But then once it's at the customer side, it's a bit hard to know how do they use the machine and what are the different parameters that they put. So you need really to build quite complex models to really first understand how each part of the machine contributes to the overall carbon footprint, and then how, based on the usage of the machine at the customer side, this will affect the total. And once you know these dirty details, then it will be easier maybe to move to what is called eco-design, which is like designing or redesigning products or machine to avoid damages to the environment, society, and the economy. So it's very complex because especially some of these big machines, they have like hundreds of thousands of different parts. So it's a quite complex project overall, but more and more companies are trying to go this way. Then we talked earlier about shared autonomous transport. So this is again a Finnish company called Remoted, and they are active on certain campuses and want to go also on cities. And as mentioned previously, it's about having better air quality, less emissions in the use phase. Of course, it's electric, so the battery production might have some impact as well, but we are not covering this one here. And then this driving style, which is also could be problematic with humans, which is not very eco-driving style. And we also mentioned that it helps to have less accidents. So this is a kind of health part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And here you see some picture of a LiDAR at the bottom. And these deep learning algorithms, so they are used for different stages of this self-driving. So the perception of the environment, the localization of the vehicle, prediction of different other vehicles or pedestrians, and then finally the decision making. So another interesting example is pharma industry. So how is pharma industry using AI for visual inspection? So there are several benefits in having this AI visual inspection, because you can really increase the quality of your product. So first of all, you will detect some products which are actually bad quality and which was maybe not detected previously. So you will increase patient safety. Okay, you have a bit more waste, but you increase patient safety. But the amount of waste will decrease again with what we call the lower false reject rate. So typically in the pharma industry, a lot of products might be rejected even though they are good quality. And AI really helps to have less of this unnecessary rejects and waste. So all in all, you still have less waste than usually, and then you increase patient safety. And of course, companies want to reduce the cost and reduce the time to do this validation. So this is yet another positive impact of implemented AI in this visual inspection. So as a conclusion, sustainability is more than just environmental consideration, but the urgency comes from there. And of course, a lot of new companies are focusing on the environmental part of sustainability, also with AI. And then the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals are really a good starting point on what matters. And then it should be done responsibly. So even though the kind of impact of AI models are still quite minimal in the big scheme of things, usage will increase, and this might become an issue in the coming years. So it's important to keep an eye on it. So that was it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Javier. Don't escape. And if I can ask Aura and Susa join the chairs as well. Let's take questions. I have a few from the web, but I want to pass the first kind of easy warm-up question to you. Let's suppose people over here, they are board of directors of a big company, and you three have been invited to visit the board of directors meeting, and they just have a very simple question. Give us so 3 examples on how in our company we could utilize AI for better sustainability. So, dear board members, our experts are ready to give the answer to, give 3 examples how AI would be used in the corporate LTD. So, shall we start from Susa?
Okay. I think it came through Patrick's presentation a little bit as well. The first thing is to start looking what's your own footprint, understanding that through the data that you have, and for having the data you have to have a proper data management practices in place. You start to look at your historical patterns, and you might actually see your hot spots for the future, what to improve.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I could say that now, because you are now working in your company with kind of like some physical phenomena, I would advise you to kind of like develop very sophisticated AI methods then to kind of like decrease the kind of like computational efforts needed for your operations. So kind of like use AI to make system run more efficiently.
I see some of the board members nodding there.
Good, yeah.
Javier.
Well, as I know, you have some big machines and employees are changing all the time and it takes huge amount of time to train them and then they leave again. So I would suggest to implement some AI companion for the employees so they can have a maybe internal chatgpt type of solution where they can really learn faster and don't have the need to ask their superior all the time how to do things.
I still need to come back to what I said in the very beginning. I'm really curious to see what Sam Altman has to say. At 8 o'clock Finnish time today, that what is the Gen AI next big wave news that are to be announced in a few hours' time. I'll take one more question from the chat, and then let's take a question or a couple from the audience here. AI uses a lot of energy. Will it really be a sustainable technology when used at big scale? Any of you have insights of I think Javier, you touched that.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, now, if you compare to what industries are creating and transportation and so on, it's still quite small, but as the usage will increase a lot, so definitely we should keep an eye on it. But I think there will be a lot of developments also in making the hardware more sustainable and using models more efficiently than now. Maybe now now the main focus has not been so much creating sustainable AI, but I think it's going to get bigger and bigger, and I think that this will be a focus area.
I can just briefly reflect on when these big corporates, they're building their major data centers. People often think that their energy consumption goes way high up, but actually it's very flat because of the efficiency that they put in place, and they use the latest technology to constantly improve the operation in that respect. So they don't see high up, they see flat. It doesn't mean that they're not using energy, but it's not exponential.
All right.
Yeah, and I would also call for responsibility and collaboration, so thinking that developing the models and methods that are actually really needed, and then kind of like doing the planning beforehand and not while kind of like developing. And also the other point of collaboration, and especially now thinking about kind of like big language models like chatgpt and thinking that if everyone is developing their own systems, it will be quite huge amount of kind of like training and usage, but kind of like collaborating in that and developing something together.
Can I build on that? Because I think Laura is bringing an excellent point. Also, if you think about that from the perspective of responsibility, know your customer. The deeper you are on a tech and these big players, they really have to know their customer, because there will be these who are eventually trying to misuse that computational power. It's really important.
And maybe one last thing is also that a lot of these companies like Amazon, Google, they invest a lot on renewable energy, so they build their own wind parks and so on. So the usage of renewable energy will also be a key factor.
Yeah, my favorite orienteering forest is about to be cut down close to, what is that, Oittaa area. Hey, let's take a question or two from the room here. Sampo, is our microphone tuned? It is. So anybody from the room, question here?
More board of directors here.
Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Sanni Bertel, and I'm both representing industry here and also a wannabe decision maker. So my question is to Professor Ruotsalainen. I found the presentation on the city boulevards very exciting. Unfortunately, only I think 4 out of 7 planned city boulevards survived the court cases. So, but my question is not really about that. My question is, with all this information and with all this research, what would be your top 2 suggestions how to turn that data into not only insights but actual decisions?
Well, I would say that kind of like the main point is to collaborate already early on. And I think there are really good also initiatives coming from the industry of kind of like joining the research already when the research is starting, because then you are able to kind of like monitor and kind of like understand early on what should be done. And I think that's also really great with the collaboration with the cities. So we have kind of like regular meetings and we are presenting the results already before they are ready, so that they can also take kind of like some decisions based on that. And that was the reason why we selected the Vihdintie Boulevard, was that because it was only in the planning, and I think it still is in the planning phase. So they can still already kind of like immediately take some advice into actions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Another question from the audience?
Yeah, this is Sakari Kotola about the boulevards again. So you are looking at the boulevards, but do you have the computing power to analyze also alternative options like tunnels where you put the cars, or do you just look at the boulevards themselves?
Well, we have the two different projects, and in the other one we are looking at the city boulevards, but in the other one we are also looking at the larger Helsinki center area and doing the simulations. So you are correct. So when we are kind of like extending the area, of course the computation increases, but yes, we are doing that, and especially here Lumi is one of the kind of like key resources that we are using to be able then to kind of like increase the size of the simulations.
Let's take a couple of questions from the chat. Really interesting questions. Now researchers are talking about energy consumption of AI, but what about the other resource consumption of AI, such as water? Any insights?
No, it's a very good and valid question when you think about these major data computational centers who are actually the backbone for building AI. And I think I can only talk about one farmer that I worked with. They pay a lot of huge attention to how the water is being used. And I think less and less so they actually use it for cooling. At least the one that, for example, Microsoft is going to build in Finland, it's not about air, it's not about using water for cooling. That's not the point. But that's what the previous technologies have done in the past in the data centers.
I have a question for the audience. As an individual person, does any of you use some really clever AI application to make you and your daily life or your family's daily life more sustainable? Any ideas, any thoughts? Simon, what might be that? Hold on. Let's take the microphone so that the people on the line can hear that. So,
I actually don't have the solution, but there's something I've been wondering at. Why isn't there a solution when it comes to electricity and when you pay not the fixed price, but you pay the variable price? So there's a huge. If you have automation in your home and you have sensors and you have an electric car and you have solar panels, so there's a lot of different dimensions on how you could optimize when and how you use electricity. But I haven't really seen any good solutions for this, but it sounds like something that becomes so complex that you would actually need some sort of AI to do this. And this is only a simple house. So why can't I find it on the market is maybe my question.
You are in a startup, so how about building one? I've been wondering, we have clever people in the room and those are good questions, but if you look around, there are people who are consuming this super fast mode. They are buying clothes with €5, they wear it half the time, they toss it away. That is utterly bad for sustainability. Would there be any ways for educate the humankind, as consumers? Any ideas how data would educate us? How can we make the humankind more clever? Any ideas?
Well, based on my kind of background, I have to say that, for example, elements of AI has really good kind of educating of AI side. So the MOOC are openly available for everyone for looking at the AI. And then also that there are really good sustainability MOOCs, so kind of trying to get people the literature kind of capabilities of both AI and then sustainability.
I think it was Sitra who has it on their website that you can actually calculate your footprint.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's a start.
Wow.
Yeah, I think in general, maybe not specifically to AI, but in terms of sustainability and sustainable habits, I think the young generation, fortunately, many of them have understood that this fast fashion is not really the way forward, and I think they are, in a way, in some cases, more advanced than we are. So I think that's yeah.
Last question from the web or from the chat. If you had one sustainability challenge to be sorted out with AI, what would you solve with AI? An easy question.
Climate change.
Climate change, wow.
So easy one, big one, but yeah, that's of course AI can can help to really make some super complex calculation and predict what's going to happen, but how to prevent it, then that's another problem. So,
any bigger challenges than
Biodiversity.
biodiversity?
Yeah, it's the challenge. We will not have even the climate if we don't fix the bio.
Well, mine would also be kind of like related to climate change and thinking that how can we move people, for example, for very kind of like distant countries without kind of like causing CO2 emissions. That's one of the personal pain points.
Any last question from the audience? Yes, please. In the sunshine.
Yeah, exactly. Good conversation on the visibility, and Kimmo from EY, by the way. The question is regarding also the visibility on the AI. If we talk about, and we have been talking about the footprint and the handprint, and if you talk or look the overall AI usage in the world, where are we in the footprint versus the handprint, the positive impact of the AI now and maybe in the next 5 years, and maybe adding their complexity on the question, and why would you think that we will see a clip or rise in this ratio from handprint to footprint in the upcoming years?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, not an easy question again. Well, I again, kind of like as a professor, I have to say that at least kind of like raising the awareness is very important point. Also, kind of like making people develop better applications and being more cautious about then the kind of like the negative sides would probably be one of the most important points here. And also, of course, kind of like, raising the awareness, I would say, on this point too.
Please, Susanna.
I think I fully agree, and I think there's so big challenges that we can actually solve if we do this right, that outweighs the other harms, potential harms. That there's so big challenges in the society, in the human lives, in health, in education, access to justice, energy, and all that itself is worth driving this. And I'm trustful, and I'm not saying I'm naive, but I want to be trustful that we'll find the ways to do the energy part in a responsible fashion as well, because the efficiency and the optimization opportunities that the technology will bring. But we need to be mindful, as Laura said, we need to understand the harm side and be educated to educate responsible decisions.
Yeah, maybe building on this, I think the big increase of energy prices had a positive impact in terms of development and finding new solutions on how to better manage your energy, and many companies have really focused a lot on that. So comes something positive out of it. So yeah.
Very good. Nobody having hands waving in the air. Three short things, and then we can close today's AI Monday. First, thank you, our speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Secondly, I would like to thank Patrick Florin and FGuy, as well Sampo Koskinen and DAIN Studios. for sponsoring the AI Monday event series for the spring season 24. And then the third topic I want to mention to folks on the line and on this room is that we just agreed 1 hour and 35 minutes ago that we will continue having AI Mondays here at Tiedekulma for the autumn season 24. So stay tuned, we are coming back. So 3 events on the autumn side, roughly once per every 2 months, as they have been during this spring side. Any 1-3 of us, if you have any wishes or great ideas for the themes, we'd be happy to hear that. But we are ready to start the summer break. And maybe one more thing still here. We do have a group of people who have a passion for AI or sustainability in the room. I do suggest that do not escape right away, but kind of turn around and look if there are persons who might be like-minded. But with that, thank you everyone. Have a great summer, and we'll see you on the autumn side.
Thank you.